Hello, hello. Welcome to the Enquiry podcast. This is a show that helps you to influence your reality to the greatest capacity in order to be able to use your life as the medicine that it is, to be able to know how to read the signposts and follow the breadcrumbs in order to express the fullness of who you are and what you're actually here for. I'm your host, Nerida Mills. I am a master psychosomatic practitioner, coach and facilitator, and it is my absolute pleasure to have you here. Welcome on board and let's get started. Welcome to the Enquiry podcast, Nat.
Oh, do you know what? This is really strange. We haven't spoken like this together for a long time, so it's going to be very interesting.
It is going to be very interesting. And this is the first interview that I've done, and I really appreciate your trust in that. And also, obviously, the first video podcast. So to everybody listening / watching at home, I wish you well. We're going to have some fun. So why don't you introduce yourself for everybody? Let us know who you are, what you're about, a little bit about your story, and we can kind of play from there.
Well, I mean, what part do you want to know?
Whatever part is relevant for you right now.
Okay, so I've been a health coach for 20 years. My name is Natalie Baldock. I studied and trained under the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, which really hones in on bio-individuality with diet. Right now, what I'm doing is a lot of DNA reporting and creating diet plans for people that are more specific to them and the future of their lives.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm loving where I'm at doing that. But I also have this really big passion for cooking. Yeah. And you can tell where I really want to be. Yeah. So I'm always in the kitchen. I'm always creating recipes. I do everything from scratch, everything whole food, best ingredients, sourced from the best places. And who I'm cooking for now is people with disabilities. And I found a real passion for that.
Yeah.
So my backstory is that 20 years ago I wasn't well. Never really thought it was to do with diet. I thought my diet was great. And I had to have a big health switch.
Yeah.
That turned everything around. I had 2 decades of good health. And more recently, I've just gone through the beginnings of perimenopause and had a bit of a shock surgery 6 weeks ago. I had a full laparoscopic hysterectomy. They took everything out except my ovaries. And I really battled with that. I battled with that for 2 reasons. 1, I never thought it would happen to me. 2, I thought it definitely wouldn't happen to me because I eat well, I exercise, I do all the right things. But there was certainly some things entering into perimenopause that didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And of course, I guided my doctor into what are we going to do for my perimenopause? And that's what he tested. Never did he suggest that we do an ultrasound to seek out fibroids. And the reason why I had the hysterectomy was I had 3 very large fibroids on the right side of my uterus. There was a small amount of endometriosis there, and it was major surgery that, it made me really go inward for the last 6 weeks.
Which is a perfect little segue because, as you know, I really love to look at what life is guiding us to do or to, acknowledge or to embrace or whatever. And so obviously, you've been on a health journey for 20 plus years. I'm sure to some degree that's guided a bit of your career path as well. How do you feel like this journey through all of it has informed your life experience and you really going in and finding Nat and knowing Nat and falling in love with Nat?
Well, I think I always loved Nat when I was a little girl. I was quite a free spirit. I had a really good upbringing. I had a tough dad, a good dad, but a tough dad. And I just always was Pollyanna. So I saw everything really positively right up until, right up until I was probably 30. And then all of a sudden someone presented me with the idea that life wasn't always just this rosy and that maybe I wasn't looking deep enough into who I was as a person. And that's why so many little things weren't going right. That was about the time that all my health change. That's when I decided to change.
Yeah.
And at that
The
time,
universe is knocking,
yes,
just little taps.
Yep. And I just got home from Japan. I'd been in Japan for 5 years. I got really unwell there. I mean, of course, my career there did not lend itself to being really healthy. And, I came home and I had to have a bit of a deep look at myself and go into nutrition, but nutrition wasn't enough. What really came to mind was that all my issues were in one area. And so that area really said to me, what trauma is unhealed?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just, for the first few years, I thought it was just the trauma that I went through in this lifetime. But it now occurs to me at menopause that it's the trauma that is generational.
Absolutely. Well, and the uterus itself speaks to that, right?
Yeah.
Because, our uterus, our eggs are formed in our grandmother's tummies.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
We are informed in that way. So the generational impact of anything to do with the uterus and the lineage of the women in the line and the behavioral patterning and emotional compensations that come through that line often will come out through the uterus.
Yeah. I don't doubt it. I look at the mothers in our family. I look at the grandmothers in our family, and I was even around when my great-grandmothers were here.
Beautiful.
And I think in our family, I really hope my family don't hear this, but in my family, I think there's a fair amount of suppression. And we always did the right thing. And we appeared to do the right thing. And there wasn't this free expression of self. And when I say that, I know there's so much more creativity in the women in my family than they actually know there is. And for me, I'm only just discovering that creativity now. I paint, I draw, I do loads of doodles in my book. I write, I dance on the beach, I travel the world.
I mean, even cooking is very creative.
Oh, I forget about that all the time. For me, it's so natural because I've done it since I was a little girl. But I don't use a recipe when I cook. All I do is really bring in my grandmother and all her teachings. And then from there, every recipe is created because there's a base for every single recipe. No matter what the recipe is, there's always a baseline, and then you just add your flavors to that. So, I mean, look, that's one big thing when I realized that I actually had some sexual trauma to deal with. And of course, you're a little girl and these things happen and you shove it under the carpet. And then you're a woman and you're exploring sex for the first time and you think it's okay to be treated like that because no one lets you talk about it.
Yeah.
And you don't want to talk about it because it's embarrassing. So you kind of just shove it away. And then as you get older and, you're in more serious relationships and you may get mistreated, then how does that trauma look long-term in the body? And for me, I've had early onset cervical cancer cells. I've had multiple LETS operations. I've had minor tumours taken off my one of my ovaries. I've had endometriosis. Even though it was not ever tested, I really do think there was some sort of signs early on of PCOS, but I think diet resolved that. Whether that really triggers some people who are listening, because I didn't ever attach a story to having it, I think diet solved it.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible. I'm a very big believer that both the body and mind and life, when you support it with the right mechanisms, anything is possible. Any form of healing is possible. And, you're a walking, talking example of that. Just, one or two of those things would knock most people out, but you've been able to move through it in a way that has not only transformed your body, but also created you who you are today. So what do you feel like it has been the most important, I don't want to say like mindset or anything like that, but the story that you tell yourself that allows you to transform these experiences in your own life into opportunities for healing and growth?
Well, I've always thought this is happening for me, not to me. It's embedded into my soul. My grandma used to always say to me as a little girl that everything happens because it's God's will.
Mm.
And I never knew what she meant. I used to just listen and listen and listen. It's in my mind. And when I hit 26 to 28 and I was going through my first real upheaval with my health, it occurred to me this was happening for me and that I had an opportunity to change to turn my trauma into triumph and to turn it into a teaching. So for 20 years after that, I really taught women how to love themselves through the tool or the resource of food. For me, eating well each and every single day actually allows somebody to feel macronutrition in their body in the highest form. And that was one thing. But then all of a sudden, I started hearing myself talk to all my clients about what do you think was the trigger that allowed you to become unwell? And then I started to notice patterns in women.
And what did you notice?
I noticed that there is definitely a style of eating when the trauma comes from mother, and there is definitely a style of eating when the trauma comes from father.
It's interesting because psychosomatically your mouth is your genitals.
Wow.
So any form of like sexual abuse, creative suppression, self-suppression, you'll often see some form of mouth addiction in some way, shape or form, whether that's cigarettes, whether that's, smoking weed in an unresourceful way, whether that's overeating, undereating, controlled eating, whatever it is, you'll see it in the mouth, or you'll see sores and issues in ulcers and stuff in the mouth.
Well, that's super interesting because I had a lot of ulcers as a kid. I know that. And I think that is something that, I'll take definitely into my own healing. I find that fascinating, actually, because when you look, I've coached over 18,000 women, and this is through, I had a very large supplement business for years. And with that, I would offer free coaching. And then, since, letting that go and having the last 4 years just supremely coaching and cooking, I've really mastered the art of sitting with somebody and having them share their own story naturally and coming to their own conclusions. And the stories are all the same. It's like I'm seeing two stories fold out every time, a father story or a mother story. It's a mother wound or a father wound. But you'll find, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if the wound is father, it can be a head wound. If the wound is mother, it can be a womb wound. So what happens is both are trying to get back to the heart. And both are trying to get what's important to the heart, which typically in nutrition means magnesium.
Interesting.
And it's in salt and chocolate. So what do we
go
for?
Like chocolate.
Like chippies or chocolate?
Yeah, I'm a savoury person.
I'm a savoury girl too. So our poor dads, what did they do to us?
Yeah.
And my mother was a beautiful, soft, gentle soul. I never heard her yell at me. She was a beautiful, beautiful, inspiring, free-spirited woman. And my dad was a very funny, charismatic, sporty go-getter. And they both had great attributes. But I just never felt quite good enough for Dad.
Yeah.
I think he had high hopes for me. And that really did play out in the way I dealt with men and the way I dealt with life in so many ways.
Trying to please?
Yeah, I was a total pleaser. And I think also there's so many layers to this, because I remember my grandma saying there's no need for depression. If you have depression, it means you're not giving of service enough. So the way
perspective.
If you had
get yourself out of your own head
and go and help
somebody. Yeah.
And I loved that so much, because there's all that layers to it. So grandma on the one side, go and help people. So anytime I felt depressed and sad, I wasn't able to feel those feelings.
Yeah.
I actually would just go and mask it by giving of service. So I set up charities.
Yeah.
So I set up charities, and, I worked in charitable organizations, and I raised money for, hospitals, and, and then I, challenged myself by opening up a big business and ended up looking after thousands of women around the world with their nutrition, and a lot of them for free. A lot of them I charge, but of course a lot of them for free. So of course I got burnt out. And when I got fibroids, I was like shocked that I was so exhausted.
Isn't that funny? I find it so interesting that all of these compensations that we make and the adaptations, right, in order, because you obviously hold your grandma in high esteem. And so we're going to listen to her advice around what we do when we're feeling a certain way. And so then, when we're feeling that way, we then adapt, do the behavior to make ourselves feel better or to not feel the thing. And then life comes along and goes, look, I'll give you a little bit of leeway around here. Like, I'm going to knock really gently, and then I'm going to tap a little bit harder, and then I'm probably going to knock a little bit harder, and then I'm probably going to knock your door down. And if you still don't listen, here comes the freight train, toot, toot.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's sort of like no matter how many ways in which we do this, resourcefully and unresourcefully, both, we're always brought back to that same truth of what you're saying, that you're noticing with your own clients, of head into the heart, worm into the heart, and let's come into that balance point, which is that heart space.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. Yeah. And I think life is always taking us there.
Yeah, always. And the road home is so beautiful. I heard this statement a couple of weeks ago. People always say you only live once. It's not true. You only die once, but you live every day.
Yeah.
And so what I am more focused on now more than ever is really living each day as if it was my last and making every moment count. I now make decisions based on moving toward love, not away from love. So everything I do has slowed down. Nope, I don't want to work this hard. I don't want to take on too many clients. I will spend 2 hours at the beach in the morning and create time, and I am going to have a yoga practice, and I'm cancelling Netflix and Gaia and all of the distractions, and we are putting our phones away at night time, and we are waking up early and going to bed early. And for me now, I'm starting to see the patterns I had was all about trying to achieve and please for others, and that created an addiction to success that was only perceived by others and not even me.
Yeah.
Because success for me is what's happening right now, which is nothingness.
Yeah. I love it. I'm obsessed with spaciousness. Honestly.
Me too. And is it our age?
Look, I think that there's a level of wisdom that comes in as you start hitting those menopause years. Your kids get older, if you've had children younger, and your body is going to drive you to the inevitable.
Yeah.
There are phases and stages of life that I can't deny anymore. Like when I was young and in my 20s, I was like, yeah, but that's for everybody else. It's not for me. Like, I don't believe that we're all destined for these things. But I think that there are certain lessons that you have the opportunity to learn that are relatively age-based. And then I think there's also then on top of that, your soul lessons that are yours for life, and we just peel back those layers and keep on peeling them back and peeling them back and peeling them back. But it's definitely like, as you know, I've been through my own health journey, and like my body's guided a lot of what I've kind of learned about myself and adopted within myself. And spaciousness to me is like, if you want to know potential, create space, because only truly in nothingness is there unlimited potential. And so the more that I cultivate that space, I know I'm more creative, I'm more present, I'm more at peace with myself. I feel connected. Like there's just, and it's so opposite to the way society wants us to live.
Well, if you want to win a distance, like frisbee throwing competition, don't stand in a small room and try to throw it up against a wall. So you do need to create spaciousness. And look, I think one of the most potent things that anyone could ever do for themselves is go and spend a week somewhere in nature without any distraction.
Yeah. Including other humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like no one. And, that can be traveling to Bali and going to the east side. That could be conscious in a place, in a country town where you might order a coffee or you might order a juice, but you just make the conversation minimal. Could I please have a juice? Pay for it. Sit down. Pull out a book, start writing, reading, start listening to yourself, start listening to nature, start seeing the patterns in nature. I kid you not. One of the things that happens with me all the time, if I'm ever consoling a woman who has had someone pass over, 2 willy wagtails turn up.
Beautiful.
In close range. If I'm missing my grandmother,
interesting.
1 turns up.
We had a little willy wagtail. So after the kid's dad passed away, we moved up literally onto this street.
Yeah.
And we lived in a house on the street for a couple of years. And it was only 6 months after he passed that we moved to this house. And the whole time we lived on that street, there was a little willy wagtail that would come and visit us every single day, solely named it Basil.
Basil.
So now every time we see a willy wagtail, he goes, "Hey, it's Basil." Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So there's patterns in life. You know, it's very interesting to notice. So I think that's probably us time. I reckon we could talk for hours and hours on this stuff quite easily, and we will after we finish recording. But thank you so much for sharing your journey. If there was one piece, I think you kind of gave it, but let's just wrap it in a nice bow. If there was one piece that you would like to share with people who are listening, who want to utilize their life as medicine and be able to transform these challenges into opportunities, what would it be?
Probably just to know that each moment, as heightened or as deep as it feels, is just as important. It's like a heartbeat.
Yeah.
It's essential for living, for your heart to beat in and out. It's essential for your journey to be one of depths of despair and heightened, wonderful, beautiful emotions. And both sides of the ride, just know that they too shall pass.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. I love that. All right, how do people find you?
Instagram, Natalie Baldock. Facebook, Natalie Baldock.
Easy peasy. Thank you so much, my love.
You're welcome.
And I look forward to doing this again at some point.
Oh, me too.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a great week, and I will speak to you soon. So that's it from us. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I would like to really acknowledge you for spending the time to explore what creates your reality and how you can influence it best. If you have absolutely loved this episode and the ones before it, then I highly encourage that you jump onto my newsletter list. You'll be able to find the details of that in the show notes. You can also follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Nerida Mills. Really, really, really looking forward to speaking with you again soon. If you have any comments, insights, feedback, anything that you would like to share from these episodes, please feel free to email me at info@neridamills.com. Until next time.